21. This meeting will be held in person, and per the Governor's Executive Order 21-87, masks must be worn in the meeting. So your mask must be on to attend our meeting. And we will remind everyone about that. So yes, if you could get a mask, that would be great. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Okay. The next item on the agenda is approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Fiorella,
Second.
second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Includes item A, approval of minutes from the regular meeting 8/12/2021. Item B, approval of minutes from the executive session 8/12/2021. Item C, the student parent handbooks, all schools. And item D, the personnel actions. Mrs. Duncanson is not able to be here tonight, so I will read the personnel actions. And there's quite a few of them as we get ready for the beginning of school. The first item is the appointment of Stephen Henn to the Dean of Student and School Culture at the high school. The second one is appointment of Melissa Kuzinitz as the Curriculum Coordinator, grades 9 through 12. Appointment of Bethany Silva, Curriculum Coordinator, grades K through 8. Appointment of Dylan Ang, School Psychologist, Preschool/Garvin, 1 year only. Appointment of Carol Cardoso in the Business Office at the high school. Appointment of Kristen Dwyer, ELA Essentials at the high school, 1 year only. Appointment of Jana Gasparo, Special Educator in McCourt, 1 year only. Appointment of Jessica Gemma, ELA Essentials, NCMS, 1 year only. Appointment of Emily Ewok, Music at Ashton and Cumberland Hill. Appointment of Stephen Lanzi, Social Studies at Cumberland High School. Appointment of Teresa Loth, ELA Essentials, NCMS, 1 year only. Appointment of Jason LeClaire, Art at the high school. Appointment of Ainsley Masseur, ELA Essentials at McCourt, 1 year only. Appointment of Cassandra Menard, Speech Language Pathologist, Preschool in Garvin, 1 year only. Appointment of Eric Merkzimmer, Math Interventionist, 1 year only. Appointment of Gina Miller, Academic Coach at BF Norton. Appointment of Sergio Neves, Social Studies/Success DBP at Cumberland High School, 1 year only. Appointment of Lynn Sue Otto, Reading Specialist at Ashton and Cumberland Hill, 1 year only. Appointment of Kimberly Rafferty, Grade 8 Math, NCMS. Appointment of Carissa Rockwell, Grade 6 ELA, NCMS. Appointment of Jenna Lappin, Paraprofessional, Success/DBP at McCourt. Appointment of Jennifer Laramie, Paraprofessional, Light, CHS. Appointment of Nikki Sofakidis, Paraprofessional in the Success Program at BF Norton. And then 3 resignations. The first resignation, Colleen Booth, Grade 7-8 Science at NCMS, effective 8/18/2021. The resignation of Jacqueline Thurber, Paraprofessional at Garvin, effective 8/18/2021. And the resignation of Tracy Pollock Tiberio, Paraprofessional at Community, effective 8/19/2021. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Rogalski,
Second.
second by Mr. Collins and Mrs. Feather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. The next item on the agenda is the report out of executive session meeting. Item A, report out of executive session meeting on 8/26/2021. The report out of executive session votes. We did not take any votes in tonight's session. And the next item is a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Motion to seal.
Motion by Mrs. Feather,
Second.
second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Over to you, Dr. Thornton.
Madam Chair, good evening. As you can imagine, this is a very busy time with school construction and getting folks back to school 5 days a week. Several topics for you. First, in your packet, you do have some information on enrollment, so I'll take you through some of those numbers if I could. The first sheet you have looks like this. It's the K-5 enrollment, and you can see the 5 elementary schools and currently what the numbers are. I would tell you this can change on the hour. We had 20 more come in after 2 o'clock today. So we are getting a lot of numbers in. Overall, we're up over 100 from 2 years ago pre-COVID. So we are getting more folks in town. So you can see, just looking at Ashton first, it's, as you know, a 2-track school, and you can see up top the class limits, 23, 23, 23, 25, 25, et cetera. Down below, you can see what Ashton's running at, so we are full, and you can see we put closed there when we feel we are closed. We watch this closely in case we do need to add a class somewhere in district, but right now we're not adding at this point in time. We can see Ashton is pretty much at that point of being full. BF Norton, you can see the same. K is closed, but there's some room in some of the other grades. For example, grade 1, 18, 17, 17. Community schools, you can see a 5-track school. We have closed K, 2, and 5, with some room in 3 and 4 in grade 2. But also still, you can see there, 679, that's a big number for an elementary school. And as you know, we are doing school construction. If we do, go forward and add that wing at Ashton and add that class space at Cumberland Hill, certainly the conversation for the committee to look at, redrawing the lines and pulling some of that 679 down to Ashton and Cumberland Hill. So that's probably a couple years away once you get those wings constructed. But that's right now 679 at community. Cumberland Hill, which now this year is living with us at the high school campus, and you can see here the K is closed. The other class grades have some room. And then Garvin, as you can see here, we do have some room at Garvin across the board. So in all, 2,072 students K-5. So that's the K-5 report. Like I said, it changes literally by the hour. So if you call me Monday, we'll have different numbers for you, and we'll give you those. Next sheet, you also have a middle school sheet to give you a sense. I won't go through all the sections, but you can see, in essence, as you know, North is larger than McCourt. North at 631, McCourt Middle at 428. And you can see there is more room at McCourt right now than there is at North. Once again, you'd have to have that conversation, as you go forward, how do you feel about those numbers and the balancing act of where the current boundaries are drawn. That's not for today, but certainly a conversation we should have. Now at the high school, little different conversation in terms of, it's 1,500 students, 1,501 as of right now, and that's pretty tight for us. Keep in mind, the trans building is now Cumberland Hills, so the high school has to run their program in the high school. So where last year you would have a lot of folks have a classroom for the day, this year you might share rooms. I'm in a room for 3 periods, you're in a room for 2 periods, and a lot of traveling for I think 11 folks. Overall, some stats for you for the high school. We're running 217 courses, 772 sections or classes over the course of the year. The classes run from 15 students to 29 students. Right now we're watching enrollment, but we get questions every day. Folks who want to come to Cumberland. Some folks don't live in Cumberland and want to come to Cumberland High School. So it's a good school, and people are enrolling. So that's a good thing. Any questions on enrollment before I go on to the next topic?
Mr. DeMonica?
Dr. Thornton, was the assistant superintendent able to figure out how many kids came back from homeschooling last year?
Mr. Damon is here, so I'll have him come down and see if he can answer that question. Moving on, my next category is, I'm sorry.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. Do we know how many of the students that are coming in, whether they're new students here or if they were in district in a private school?
I haven't done a survey yet or a census. Once we open, I can probably come back next meeting with that census for you. The ones I interact with, a lot of them are coming in from out of state. I had someone from Oklahoma today talking to me on the phone, so a lot of out-of-state folks. As you know, I saw an article in the Projo, Cumberland, I think, is the third fastest growth city or town, e.g. Barrington, Cumberland, as far as who's moving here. So a lot of people coming to Cumberland.
Right. Okay, thank you.
My second topic, I'm calling it 5 days a week. Just, as you know, we're in person 5 days a week. That's a good thing. Every decision we make has that in mind. We want to make sure we stay 5 days a week. That's why we're, obviously doing all the things we're doing, masking, et cetera. So to us, nothing can really replace in-person teaching. While Zooming was great when we had to do it in the pandemic, it's really valuable to be in person. So, that's why we are doing what we're doing as far as, cleaning, masking, distancing, all those things we're doing. Also, as part of our submission to RIDE for our back-to-school plan, we had to put forth a plan to do regular voluntary testing for students. So we actually linked up with a federal program. It's free, affinity testing, and they will be connecting with us. We enrolled 2 days ago with Mr. D'Amato and myself. Each school will have a regular testing cycle, might be 7, 10 days, could be less, out of the nurse's office. They come, it's voluntary, and they do the PCR testing for those that want to get tested. So it's a good resource for those that want it, and it's part of the requirements for RIDE to get a back-to-school plan approved. So we did that through the federal program. So that's going to be, we have an onboarding meeting, I believe, next week on that. So that's something that we're going to move forward on. For masking, obviously, we are masked tonight. We have the governor's executive order, which is new from our last meeting. In terms of playing it out for you, just to kind of tell you how I'm thinking about this, September 18th is when the order ends, as I understand it. He could either renew it or not. If he didn't renew it, our policy would just kick in. And as superintendent, I look at the data on or around the 18th and decide to keep masking going or not. And then at the next meeting, you all would get the item per the policy. So that's how I look at it. Either he'll extend it or he won't, and then the policy would kick in. So that's kind of how I am looking at that. I know there was some question in the community on school orientations. I wanted to take a minute and talk about that. We do talk often to our district physician, Dr. Crotty, about advice around the pandemic, and we talked about back-to-school orientation. I know some schools had planned some, programs where folks would go in the classrooms or in the hallways, and she advised against that because really, to her, that was kind of like a clustering situation. We don't want folks congregating like that in uncontrolled settings where we could have a meeting like this where folks are masked, socially distant. That would invite, I think, to her some unsafe possibilities. So we didn't have the folks in the halls, if you will. We did have principals talking to their folks, having Chromebook pickups, having meetings, but not in a kind of hallway setting, if you will. So that's why I did that. I know people want to see the trans building, and as soon as we're up and running, we are going to have the principal do a video tour of the trans building. I'm going to film, and she's going to walk around and give folks a tour. So we'll publish that probably next week when we're up and running, so folks can see what the trans building looks like.
Mrs. Feather? Mrs. Rogalski, sorry.
I just want to check, so the student tours such as the Meet the Teacher community, those are still allowed to occur?
Right now, any program that we're trying to approve would be something that's outside or something that's more of a mass gathering in like a venue like this, with spacing. We're not looking to have tours in classrooms, in hallways, so.
Okay, because as far as I know, tomorrow communities, nope, did they change it? I'm sorry, I might have missed something.
May I interject on that? Yes, community school tomorrow is having that outdoor to meet the teacher, and they are going to be doing things and still meeting the teachers outdoors. They will not be a tour inside the school. They're not
Okay.
going to walk to their classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And outdoors is fantastic, right? So we get the open air, and that's great. So that's what we're looking to do.
Mr. Collins?
I have some questions. I'll make sure I don't hog up all my time. The first one actually has to do with masking. This question is just a point of clarification. So masking is required in school, but will masking be required outdoors at recess?
No, it is not required outside for sports or recess. It
Okay.
is not. If sports take place inside, they would have masking for volleyball, but recess and sports, per the state, no masking required outside.
I'll just ask one more. About, so there were a couple members of the community, I don't know if it was part of a group, asking for distance learning. RIDE isn't said no distance learning. But if a student is forced to quarantine, an unvaccinated student, or even a, God forbid, anybody get COVID,
Right.
what's the plan for a student who has to quarantine or either has to stay out of school because they are COVID positive?
For a couple of scenarios. First, probably more likely for elementary school than high school, as the older kids have vaccinations. But if a whole classroom was, asked or had to quarantine, the teacher would teach virtually for that period of time, and we could accomplish that virtually with the whole teacher, the whole classroom. If one student is quarantined for 10 days, and say they're a high schooler, we would use Google Classroom. If a student, we have one student this week who was medically placed out of school for 3 months. We actually have a program for that student called Connections Academy, and that's a virtual program that student can access. So we're doing that case by case as they come in, but that was one we approved the other day for 3 months for a student that's out. So really depends case by case, but we are looking to, if the whole class is quarantined, we would go virtual for that class. That's how we'd play that.
Ms. Smith?
But one more thing I would add, in many cases, though, you'll see, I think, less quarantining than last year in many cases. As you know, the metrics have changed where if I have a vaccination, I'm exposed to Ms. Smith, who's COVID positive, let's say, and I'm not symptomatic, I can go back to school. So it's a much different conversation than last year as far as,
But the
Quarantine.
only issue is with the elementary level, the kids,
Correct.
none of those are vaccinated, and I think
Correct.
that's really still a concern.
agreed. Agreed.
If I could just add to that, please, because Rhode Island Department of Health, that was part of the discussion last week. And my understanding is whether they're vaccinated or non-vaccinated, as long as both students or students in that vicinity were wearing masks, no one else would have to quarantine, and that includes elementary.
The only caveat is if someone's symptomatic, right? If someone's showing a symptom, then we would quarantine.
The entire class.
The students who are symptomatic would quarantine.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Yep.
and I apologize because I didn't see that in Rido's writing. and
Understood.
so-
Keep in mind, this is also very fluid. Anytime we get a positive case, we meet as a team, we call RIDO, and we go
Mhm.
case by case every time with these. We had a case the other day with tryouts, one of our sports teams. We had a positive case, and we had to process that already and kind of go through it. And it's a protocol every time we go through. And it'll happen, I'm sure, at some point this year, and we'll follow the process.
Mrs. Rogowski?
So just so I can have clarification on this, and so anyone watching can, we're in a classroom. Let's do elementary because there's no vaccinations there. Student A is positive for COVID, so no one else in the classroom would be quarantined unless they were symptomatic, correct?
That's correct.
Is that the same for all levels?
That's correct. If
Okay,
everyone's
and if-
masked, yes,
Okay,
correct.
and if someone is symptomatic, then they're quarantined?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a quick follow-up to that?
Yes, Ms. Feather.
Madam Chair? Is there any, I know there are privacy concerns, but is there any notification given to the other students' parents if there has been a positive case in the classroom?
There would be same thing we'd do last year as far as telling the school community we had a positive case. Same process as last year for that. Mhm.
So I suppose the difference is, last year, if someone was positive, we did a lot of contact tracing
Mhm.
and a lot of quarantining of a lot of people, in
Mhm.
many cases, especially at the high school level. And now the guidance is, if someone's positive, we don't have to automatically quarantine any of the close contacts.
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Smith, did you have a question?
I did, thank you. Just to the point in how we're discussing it here, there's a lot of details that go into this, just as a lot of details behind your discussions with Dr. Crowdy in making those decisions. And I'd like to see a more open communication with the public
Mhm.
to give more specific information on that. I think if we advise the public that, the school tours were not happening and why, and it was due to the rise in the COVID cases and our recommendation from our doctor, I do think that we would have quieted the crowd, because a lot more people would have an understanding of it. And the same here, I do feel that we need to we need to put something together and get it out to the public and get it out to our students and the parents to say, these are the scenarios right now in how a quarantine would work and why it would happen, so that people do not get confused and think, up there goes the whole classroom again, and you're not
Right.
giving my child distance learning because they're in elementary school, but you have Google Class for the high school. Those types of things.
Actually, on that note, this Friday again, we'll have a SUPS memo, and one of those is an FAQ that's been updated from last year. So that's going to go out tomorrow.
Okay, all right, yeah, and I think that that's important, everything that we can do and give to the public, and sometimes putting it in a nice, easy chart on one page gives a lot of information, and I think a lot of parents feel some relief to know what they're looking at and can post it on their refrigerator and, see what's gonna happen.
Sure.
Mrs. Rogalski?
One last quick question. So if a student, if a positive student's quarantined at the high school and middle school, they have access to Google Classroom, what is the plan for elementary school students if they are sick to make sure that their education continues?
I'm going to hold that. Mr. Demona's in a minute going to do an instructional
Okay.
FAQ.
I was wondering if
So
I was
I'm going to
getting ahead
hold
of
that for the next topic.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Before I go to Mr. Demona, let me segue to number 6, the vaccinations. That kind of fits.
Just one second, Mr. Collins?
Since we're talking about the school reopening, I did have a couple more questions. One, a lot of the federal money was earmarked for mental health, and we've talked quite a bit about mental health in there. Obviously, learning loss is key, but mental health, what added services do we have in place? Because there is an anticipated mental health issue in the classroom. A lot of these kids haven't been to school now for 18 months.
Right.
Some kids have never been to school, and so what do we have in place to address those things? Do we have added counselors? Do we have?
We actually added a school psychologist in our plan for this fall, but also Mr. Demona can also hit that, I think, in the instructional FAQ.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The only other question I had was regarding, I've spoken to you privately about this, but I heard from 2 members, educators today, concerned that the transition building would not be ready by Monday based on what they saw today. Can you guarantee that will be ready on Monday?
I can guarantee it'll be ready.
Okay.
Where we are right now, folks came in today to their classrooms and set their classrooms up. There's more work to be done on the classrooms, and we'll cover that also with our construction update with Mr. Merce tonight. But it's moving along. Everything is on schedule to open. Tomorrow, we're doing the hallway areas, finishing up on some bathroom work. It is truly a sprint and a team effort, but it will be open.
Now, you said it's going to be open by Monday, but the only final question I have is, are you prepared, God forbid this happen, if we hit a spike in COVID cases and there's a massive outbreak, are we prepared to seamlessly move into distance learning based on what we learned last year, or do we have a contingency plan in place for that?
We do. I mean, if we had a massive spike like that, tonight in fiscal sub, we actually had a conversation around Chromebooks and how that would be deployed off our carts. But yes, we'd have to quickly pivot to DL if that happened, God forbid. But I don't see that happening yet. We are tracking our cases still, so I don't see any massive spike coming from Monday. But yes, we are already thinking about that,
Okay, thank you.
especially for our elementary grades.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could pivot to number 6 first, before I go to Mr. Demona. Vaccination status, as you know, we had 2 clinics in Cumberland scheduled. One was canceled due to the hurricane, but there's a second one now on September 13th in Hope. 2 weeks ago, we had a 48% vaccination rate for our kids 12 and up, so we need to improve on that, but that's what it was a few weeks ago. So 13th of September in Hope, we'll certainly advertise that again, but that's our next opportunity for a clinic. So now I will pivot to Mr. Demona for what we call the instructional FAQ. You can ask all those questions. I know Tony heard the first couple, so we can answer those questions for you. Mr. Demona.
Sure thing. Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair. So, Paul, I'll keep my mask on. So, Mrs. Rogalski's question, I believe, was what happens if there is a student, a single sort of student who has a case. Principals are going to be prepared to work with the classroom teachers in an event like that, where they'll get the work so that however long that period is, if it's a 7-day stint, that they are on Google Classroom following whatever is going on in the classroom at home, not virtually in terms of in front of the teacher virtually, but on Google Classroom. And as Dr. Thornton referenced, tomorrow there is going to be an FAQ. Keep in mind that when they post that on the website, The high school FAQ is separate. It's a separate link on the main FAQ document because their circumstances obviously are a little different in terms of aesthetics. I don't have anything specific. I didn't know if, as we're on the cusp of the start of the year, I will answer any questions to the best of my ability that you have. There was one other question. I don't remember what it was. I apologize.
Mr. Collins had a
Mr. Collins'
question.
I did have a question about mental health services. What added services do we have in place for students that is different than last year? I heard school psychologist, but one psychologist can't cover over 4,000 students. So I'm just curious as to what the plan is, because there obviously, a lot of this federal money was earmarked for mental health. So what have we hired? What's different this time?
We went by whatever Dr. Santa, recommended in terms of what she wanted and how she felt the schools were going to be equipped to do that work. I do know of the one psychologist that was placed on. There is a psychologist intern that'll be coming on board. A lot of the resources that we added were in the academic realm. Preschool needed some additional people, but as far as mental health in particular, that's all I know.
Thank you. If I could go on to school construction, we started.
Any
Oh,
other
sorry.
questions for Mr. Devon?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we had Mr. Merce tonight from Colliers. Before I turn it over to her, just it truly has been a team effort. We have weekly meetings. We have daily meetings with the folks here from the different groups. Today we even walked a Garvin again to get a good sense of what's going to happen at Garvin next year. It really is an exciting time to see the plans to expand cafeterias, add classroom wings. So it really is gratifying to see all the work that's going to happen. So I guess question one, if you could kind of help reinforce, are we going to open on Monday? If you could.
Sure. Good evening. It's nice to see you all in person again. Yes, with the opening of Monday, this update is pretty critical. The swing space has been a push, and we had a very good meeting today. I can commit to you that recognizing walking into a construction site 2 or 3 days prior to delivery, it typically looks like what it looks like right now. HV Collins has been great. They've been really proactive. They will be there through the weekend cleaning. The combination of the administration and HV Collins and the architect, they really have hit the mark where they could control. I can say the teachers were there today, and obviously their furniture had been moved back into their new classrooms this week. The Univent work is done. We were told today that the kindergarten bathrooms will be operational and good to go on Monday. All the new bookshelves are in. So I believe the feel of the walkthrough went really well. I think that, it's going to be an adjustment, of course, but I think overall it's a great swing space, and it will be, from the students' perspective, where they're going to be taught, it's in great shape. Will be in great shape on Monday. As far as there are certain areas that either there were some design changes for a better use of the space or just delays because of COVID deliveries, there are certain items I'll run through with you that we know when they'll be finished, but we've been chasing for the last 2 or 3 months. So the nursing area in the back administration offices, like when you walk in, it'll look fine, but the nurses area will not be complete for a few weeks. The superintendent, Dr. Thornton, has walked with the nurse into an area that she's very happy with for a temporary space. And that was when it was originally designed, this space was approved with a certain design, and then when Dr. Thornton came on, he revisited the plan and came up with a better use and a change. So it took some time, but it's a much better use of the space. So that was a little bit delayed.
If I could, the nurse, just so you know where it is, the trans is basically a donut with two floors on it. The center of the donut is the library, and the nurse. There's a wall separating it into 2 offices, and the nurse is in there. Including in that are all the things we need for a nurse isolation room and also a portable washing station, all the things we need per the regs. So
in that construction with the nurses, that's a bathroom and office. I mean, it's a significant amount of work. There obviously will be working through there right through, but that the deliverable on that is mid to late September. The devices on the vestibule, it's a company called Signet, and they're just chasing the devices has been tough. They're anticipating them to be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So the vestibule is operational, but not, you won't be able to buzz in. So it's going to have to be coordinated with the administration to just have it handled the way it was done before. But again, all of the work around it, once these devices come in, it'll be set up and good to go. So again, all of these things have been discussed for weeks and weeks and weeks, trying to anticipate the things that we couldn't control. The playground equipment typically is a long lead time. With COVID, it's just made it worse. So even if you get a delivery date, then you chase it, and then they say, oh, 2 more weeks. So it's been that kind of thing. But we have a commitment that it will be in mid-October. So, and that is in that new playground area all the way to the left if you're looking at the back of the school. So that is, we worked with the principal and, of course, Dr. Thornton in walking through what that looks like and how they'll handle that until that happens. So I think, there's the HVAC which has just recently been approved through the balance of the administration, and that will start. The mechanisms and the mechanicals of that are will be in shortly. So but that's a pretty significant project. So they'll start that in the next week, and that'll be done mid-October. And the nice thing about working with HB Collins is if they say mid-October, we get it then or earlier. They've been really, really good about deliverables, and very straightforward and very flexible, which is very helpful. So that's where we are with the swing space. I believe the end result, I think you'll be happy with it. I think the teachers will recognize that for a swing space, for a temporary space, it's an amazing space to even have. The fact that this district has it is just something that you just don't see. So it's been a tight summer, but I can guarantee you everyone's committed to make sure on Monday you're good to go. So if you have any questions on the swing space? We're good, okay. Cumberland Hill, we have the demo permit and the foundation permit. We're working on the full permit. If you go in there now, it's a demolition site. It's been great because we've been able to go in and you see things after the fact when demo starts happening that you pick up on that, maybe fortunately from a budget perspective, both of these projects are in great shape. So it's been really helpful to go through these schools and get a sense of what the end result's going to be and if there's anything that the district is looking for that they didn't maybe pick up earlier. So that's been really helpful. And again, HV Collins has been very flexible with coming up with alternate pricing or whatever it is that's coming up that might be something the district would like to consider. So that's moving right along. So the next projects, as Dr. Thornton mentioned, is Garvin. Actually, they're all 3 happening, but Garvin specifically because that's a very large-scale project out of the gate. So that would start literally construction at the end of June 2022. With that being said, the schematic designs are really underway. And as Dr. Thornton mentioned, we walked today with the administration, the architect, and really getting a sense of what you're buying. Like, what is the scope? Is there anything missing? It's going to be a really exciting project. That school's in really nice shape as far as the whole layout and how it works, and the design is really interesting. And with, you have all these new common areas and a new cafeteria and all. So it was a really successful walkthrough, and I believe Torado Architects had a handle on everything that was supposed to happen, and it will be in the plans. So he's tightening those up now, and then they'll go out for estimating. Estimating takes 2 or 3 weeks, and while that's happening, they'll finish the Cumberland, Ashton and Community, and that's the new additions that'll start next summer. So we'll roll them out, and we'll go to the building committee with the schematics and get them approved to submit, because then we'll have the numbers. It's really important that we see the estimates to make sure we're where we're supposed to be. And then we go to the building committee, show them the schematics, come to you for approval, then it goes over to RIDE for the first review. And we'll roll all 3 of those out relatively quickly because they have to go to RIDE 3 times and then get out to bid to start for next summer. So although we have 2 very active construction projects, there's really 5 projects happening right now. But everything is on schedule and moving right along. So, that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. DeMonica?
Holly, where do we stand in regards to this project that we're doing right now, the trans building? Were the estimates that Torado came up with, were they close to what actually came out in bidding, or were we too high, too low?
They both, it came in right where they were supposed to come in. We had shifted some of the work. If you remember, the transitional building, the swing space was 2-phased, right? So we're coming back to that building at the very end of the 5 years to finish up for the preschool. So there were items that made sense to do now. So the numbers seemed higher, but it was really the same budget, just would probably be less expensive to do now. So there were scopes that were pushed to the first phase. But as far as keeping on budget and being where we're supposed to be, yes, both estimates did. And Cumberland Hill was right on point, and then the numbers came even lower when it went out to bid.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and giving us that update, and
You're welcome. I look
Good
forward
luck.
to doing it again.
Thank you, and I know my last item, some folks wanted the Durham bus update on, and Mr. Steve Schmuck is here, so you can certainly come up, and as he's coming up, I would just say, we have our bus routes posted today. We are always looking to make some tweaks as they're needed to the routes, and we had a few tweaks today in the afternoon, but we are up and running and ready to go for next week. But Mr. Schmuck is here to answer any questions you may have.
Hi, if I can, I'd like to give you just a quick overview. One, I'd like to apologize. Our local manager had a prior commitment that we couldn't reschedule, so I came in to meet with you tonight. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much. I know we've worked diligently on getting a new contract and resolution, and I think both parties are very happy about going forward with that. I am very confident in saying and comfortable in saying that we actually have a driver for every seat for Monday. And if you look at the news, and not just our industry, but across the board, that's not common. We are very challenged across, I can speak for the East Coast, in significant ways. So we feel very blessed, knock on wood. We continue to work hard to recruit, retain, do the right things for our people. We do want to target 115%. We're not at the number we want to be at, but we do have a driver for every route, which is excellent. And we do have a couple extra monitors in any way if we can help and work with the district. If that's a need, we can work through conversations there as well. As Dr. Thornton said, we did put out the routes. As calls come in or things change, obviously we'll adapt quickly, swiftly, and make efficient changes. We were notified of some changes with BF today that we got to work through quickly on. I know tomorrow we're going to be reaching out regarding the swing space just to make sure we are in agreement and alignment on the traffic patterns and how we want to approach loading and unloading, so that's not an issue. Let's see. We got all the pre-K data, which we continue to work through, and those additions along with special ed continue to come in. So unfortunately, we do have a lot more out-of-district placement on the special ed routes. So at this point, we have added one special needs minibus, but we still have to go back, validate out any parents that may be bringing their children to any of the programs, which then would back down the number and possibly reduce that. So that's still going to be a work in progress as we go through starting the school next week. That's really just kind of the quick overviews that I wanted to hit on. One last item, if I can. I'd like to request an opportunity to work with the DPW and or the police department. I'm sure that there's probably some scheduled regular meetings where they talk through road construction, sidewalk constructions, those type of things, monthly, annually, weekly, however. We'd like to be a part of those conversations if at all possible, or get memos or updates rather than, sometimes like our drivers are doing dry runs this week and there were streets closed and we don't know that, or, it causes obviously last minute changes and we don't want that kind of stuff. So if there's any way we can work with you, and I ask my local team to make sure we reach out, I just wanted to make that kind of formal request. I think it'll make, services better for you in the future. But any questions at all?
Madam Chair? I have
Mrs. Feather.
Thank you. Hi. Nice to meet you. We've been getting a lot of questions from parents about bus routes and everything. So thank you for saying how you have that guaranteeing the driver for every bus right now, which is really it's spectacular. I heard from a parent today who is at that 1.92 mile cusp. How is that determined? Is it like a Google Map thing? Is how do we determine how far someone is physically from the school?
Yeah, excellent question. So we use Versatrans, which is one of the top, probably 2 or 3 standard routing solutions in our business. And it gives us, geo points along each street, along the map. And we look at a couple different measurements. We look at their home to stop distance, as far as walking, what that would look like. And then, of course, their home walking distance to the school. And so that's done by the map points along the street. So we don't, I don't think there's like a per se like crow's nest kind of flying measurement, but the system will tell us that if it's close. And obviously we also mark in any kind of hazard walking areas, and if that comes up and flags, a modification, again, we partner with you guys on some decisions, but we try to use your transportation policy as the guide.
As the guide, thank you. And actually, you just touched upon the other piece that I was going to ask you about. How often is the hazard pieces, particularly I'm looking at the fact that we just got a notification about a sexual predator moving into the district. So how often are you updated on that?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So we have on our maps, there's actually an indication. I do have to go back and look, so I don't have an answer as far as how frequent those are updated. Mm-hmm. But on our maps, there is a point where it shows if there is an identified predator, that's been, moved in or whatever, and we obviously route around that. We move a stop before or after, or however we can modify for that. I don't know the frequency of update, and I apologize for that. But yeah, and then the hazard, just general hazards, with the streets, we have those identified, and as we work with, with the town and identifying those we've kind of labeled them over the years. We did, I think, produce a list, I think relatively recently, for review. And the great thing is too, in Rhode Island, you guys have the policy or the law that says, the police departments review all the routes, which I really love that, because they can add their own perspective to the safety.
Great, thank you. And sorry, I'm monopolizing. I promise I won't anymore. But you just mentioned a great point. The police department reviews and has the police department reviewed this year?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I would have to have the local team do that. They know that requirement? and-
Yes,
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Thornton.
and they're still reviewing. We talked twice yesterday about
Thank you.
different scenarios. As she said, things are fluid. Construction, certain situation, things change. We are talking to them a lot.
Thank you. And thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you. How often do you monitor capacity on buses? And the reason I ask is because one of the complaints we received this summer, in the last month or so, is my child has to walk to school, but the bus drives by them on the way there is at half capacity. So, yeah, we have a policy in place, but if there's 10 kids on a bus that holds 40, can't we accommodate kids who are? And I would imagine you wouldn't know that right now, but after 2 or 3 weeks, if the bus driver tells you there's only 10 kids on this bus, we could definitely take another 30 kids. Is that something we'd be able to reconsider? I don't know if you'd be able to answer that, or Dr. Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak from our perspective, certainly. So when we route, we absolutely look at the capacity, and in many cases, like in the high school area here, we actually overroute, probably by almost 100%. So we will plan like 120, ridership. It's almost like we overbook like an airline, based on, kids that get their own rides to school, have their own vehicles, et cetera. So then we modify, quickly adapt where there's shortages or overages the first couple days, if there is that. And then as we look at the first couple weeks of school, if we do have a route that is, running earlier and it has capacity, we quickly identify that and look at if there's other routes that need more time and we can pull from it. And then, of course, if there is truly space available at that time, then we could work with the district and say, if you had a walking situation, we could do it. But I will call out and say, like, some routes, optically, when it drives by, like if you have a bus that goes around the reservoir from years ago when I remember routing, you might have a much lower capacity on that because of the time constraints. So it will, if you add more to that, now all of a sudden it's not getting us to a destination on time. So it's a balance, a little bit of capacity and distance.
I think he stole my thunder. That was if every stop you add adds to the mix of whether or not you get there on time. And oftentimes the complaint of buses are, you're late. Why are you late? So every stop could add 2 or 3 minutes. So if you have 4 or 5 of those, now you're like up against it. So it's really a balance between getting on time and who can you pick up.
What about a student who is at that 1.9 mile cusp? So they're at 2.1 and they're required to walk to school. Well, wouldn't it make sense for them just to walk to the nearest bus stop? Couldn't they do that? Is that something they could do, or is that prohibited? Or if it's closer for a kid to walk to a bus stop than it is to the actual school, is that something they'd be allowed to do?
So we provide all of our drivers with routes that have, like it can be lefts and rights, it could be just stops listed and/or include the student data. So they know who's supposed to be eligible to ride their vehicle or their bus. I'm not going to say that in a neighborhood you don't have people crossing, bus routes or jumping on different buses. That's not supposed to happen. It's not encouraged. I would say that if there's a situation where there is something that, 2.1 or 1.9 and there's a safety concern or something like that, I think we would work together on addressing that in a case-by-case situation.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to that point there, is it possible for us to get a report now of, what buses are out there and how many students are at each stop or anticipated at each stop for each of the schools, so that we can have some type of idea on, what that capacity is versus that time, and we can take a look at it, because I do think that at some time we're going to have to re-look at the distances. So that is, my first question. If we can get that, and then several weeks into the school, can we also get an update after all these changes potentially could be made?
I think Mr. Fiorello would like to add something first.
Yeah, I've been working on the transportation policy for some time, actually. COVID kind of threw it in for a loop. Our transportation policy has never been very strong. It's always been about a half a page. What's happened over the years is, as Mr. Schmuck was saying about, looking at different situations and half-filled buses, and superintendents over the past have added, or principals for that matter, have added more and more students to these stops. So the walking distances weren't really being enforced as they were written. They were more about what was needed in these neighborhoods. The policy is going to be completely rewritten. It's almost finished for a final draft. And I'm hoping to be able to bring that to policy at the next meeting. Mm-hmm. And we'll be able to address a lot of these issues, and a lot of the things that Mr. Schmuck mentioned are actually going to be spelled out very clearly in the new policy. And one of the problems, though, with shortening some of the distances right now is, as he said, there's just such a shortage of drivers. I just read something, Massachusetts seems to be in much worse condition than Rhode Island is right now. And this is a national problem, and has been for years. But we will be looking at the entire policy, and we'll have an opportunity to make adjustments. And we may have to provide, we're going to have to provide lead time for Durham to make any adjustments, either to routes or personnel, as we move forward.
Great.
And then we'll have to listen to the business office about the cost. So
No, that's good to know, and yes, and I think that's been in my responses to parents on concerns on those distances and the walking and things, that their student may not have any adjustments to start the year, and the chances of adding more buses is going to be very low because of the shortage that we're seeing, especially throughout New England.
and not to mention just the sheer cost of running an additional bus.
Well, right, that's, we're not going to run it for 2 children.
No, and
that
quite
sounds
honestly,
horrible, but
I looked at my original notes on this policy. I started doing all the research in December of 2019, and nationally, everybody seems to have the same problem that we're having. And what's happening is more and more walking distances around the country have been extended, not for student safety, but quite honestly, for economic reasons. And I understand that, especially being in Cumberland, I understand that. But I don't think we can allow that to continue anymore, especially when we have the earliest start time at the high school in the state, and we have students walking on sidewalks in the pitch black, students standing at bus stops in pitch black during the winter months, and also a town that doesn't do anything to clear sidewalks or enforce property owners to clear sidewalks. You know, it's challenging for the town to just have the manpower and equipment to clear the sidewalks in front of the schools themselves. But now if you have a student, like a high school student technically would walk from Davenport's all the way up to the high school. And there's no way they're gonna be able to do that on a sidewalk if it snows. So we need to really look at everything going on in this town.
If I could continue to ask just a couple of more questions. Some parents have said that they've tried to contact Durham to request or to work with them for their child who's right on that line of that 2 miles, say for the high school, and the concern of walking on main roads in the dark, that maybe the police have just said, no, that road's fine. So is there somebody specific, I mean, that they should be talking to? Should they be going through a representative with the school? Or can they talk to you? Because if there's leeway with that 1.95 miles versus the 2, and they're 100 feet away from a bus stop, should they have an opportunity, and can parents talk through that with you to see if there's any way to have any flexibility?
Yeah, so, we obviously are gonna look at two things. Obviously, the application of your town policy and expectations, and we're gonna try to adhere to that. If something is of a safety nature, then immediately red flags, our safety officer, who we have, on site, and our manager, that will look at a situation, and oftentimes either reach out, through the police department, go on site, visit it themselves, look at the situation, and respond accordingly. I can tell you that and from experience, because I actually worked in Cumberland for quite some time years ago, there's a lot of those gray area exceptions that they want, and you can't move, everything by 5 feet here or there. It creates, once you give in for one, it just domino effects through the whole neighborhood. So we really do try to strictly adhere to the policy, and I think based on an exception, I don't think Cumberland has a transportation director or anybody dedicated to that at this point, but through the school district administration office, we would have to then talk through whether they want us to modify that exception. So yes, they can reach out. I can tell you, I was talking with the bus yard today. They had a number of parents call about a couple different changes, on the stop or modification on the route. We quickly adjusted those, able to call the parent back and say, this is the right, safest move. And so we absolutely will work with people on safety, but when it comes to the policy, we're going to try to adhere to that pretty firm.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask one final question then, and it goes to Mrs. Feather's point earlier as well. We're hearing a lot about the concerns either with children that have to walk to school passing somebody that's a sex offender that's been registered. There was another situation, I believe that there's a bus stop right near the newest person's home. So is that something that your team would work on to try to get a bus if it's under that distance, but the children have to pass by that route?
I can take that one. We actually had notice of a case like that today, and we took care of it the same day. So as we get knowledge of those things, a safety issue, we take care of it quickly. So that was changed today.
Okay, yeah, and my concern is primarily down in probably the BF Norton area, and that is children having to walk and be subjected to that, and the concern that parents have. And I'm just wondering if, even though that's under maybe the 3/4 of a mile, are the students going to get a bus?
Really, to me, that's more back to a policy question and reviewing with the police as far as the safe travel for students on that area, whatever that route would be. Because the police do know all those dynamics, so we really
Okay,
prefer to
so
them.
that would be, so we would expect that the police would
Mhm.
have that review and make that decision? then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeMonica, and then Mr. Collins.
Mr. Schmuck, thank you for coming. It's been a while since we've seen you, but I'm glad that you've been able to tell us we have enough drivers and enough monitors to get the routes going. So many of those questions that I had through the superintendent's office, you've actually answered tonight, so thank you on that. One question I have, Steve, is last year at the Garvin School, when I would pick up my daughter working there, there would be a small Ford minivan, one of the really small Fords. It's painted white, and it said statewide on it, and they were doing statewide transportation. So and they were picking someone up from Garvin, so my question is can we research that with the state and find out if it's good for statewide transportation, can it be good enough for Cumberland? So if we have an issue where we have one child going out of district, instead of putting them in the minivan, or, or a mini bus, whatever it may be, that we're able to put them in a van like that with different licensing requirements. I'm sure it's just a chauffeur license, and maybe be able to save some money district-wide, and for your company as well, hiring someone for those little minivans. We've been told they had to be yellow, they can't be minivans. Well, they're out there, and I took pictures of it, and I just want to have Durham look into it and see if we can save any money that way, moving some of these children out of district.
Sure. I can't speak to the legality of whether you can or can't use statewide, or I don't know that answer. But what I can speak to is that I don't currently have any vans assigned or purchased for that, but it's something I can do. I know years ago they banned the vans, and I think it was in 2000 from Rhode Island, and those are back now
Right.
on those case-by-case situations for out of district. It's absolutely something we can look at and negotiate a rate or a price, because I know we
Right.
don't have something
No,
in the
that's all. It's
contract.
just something to look at. If it's good enough for the state,
Yep.
it should be good enough for Cumberland as well. And it just caught my eye that that van showed up every day, and something, maybe savings for us down the road. The other question I have for you, Steve, is if you can't answer it, maybe the business office can. How much does it cost us for a school bus per day in Cumberland? Do you know?
Oh, gosh, I wish I had that memorized. I don't. Alex probably can spit that right off the top of
Right.
his tongue. I'm not sure.
Just curious. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
if we're
a daily
talking
rate, 'cause I know
busing-
we have a special ed rate, we have a wheelchair rate, we
Right.
have a regular ed.
If we're, excuse me?
358.
So when we're here today talking about busing, how much it would cost us? We're talking $358 a day plus labor and everything else to go along with it. So, we just have to keep that in mind. I think what we've done here last year is we fixed the routes that were broken, because we've allowed so many children to get on the buses that should have been walking. But as Mr. Fiorello said, this town is not, not good to walk on. We don't have the sidewalks. We don't make people shovel them. We let businesses plow them in, and, their driveways, and they block the edges so children can't walk. I've seen elementary school kids for BF walking in the middle of Dexter Street because the street's not, cleaned and sidewalks aren't cleaned. This is a town problem as well. We can't keep on adding more kids to the buses and be able to afford it every day, and not have the town take some responsibility here for sidewalks, especially near schools. So, Mr. Schmuck, thank you for coming tonight. I mean, you answered most of my questions tonight for sure. And hopefully, next couple of days, nobody will be screaming at us in regards to the bus routes. Mr. Superintendent, Dr. Thornton, did we not have Mary and Verone working for the buses in Cumberland? Handling things like that?
We did, but now we have a new person, Tracy. Help me, Mike Chandler. Tracy Walton is our new person. She's on past couple days. She's doing a great job.
All right, so we just need to bring her up to speed in regards to it, because I would personally like to see all the calls for busing go through our office, and we make the decision then
Yep.
having Durham have to make a decision because it's us.
She's already actively involved with myself and, and,
All right,
and
thank
folks.
you. So we should really encourage people to call our office in regards to busing issues. Thank you.
Yes.
Maybe we can include that in the Friday memo. Yeah. Mr. Collins, did you?
Sorry, I'm happy to hear that you have fully staffed, but your buses are fully staffed. Do you have a pool? One of the issues in the past is driver absences. Do you have a pool of reserve candidates, anybody on standby just in the event that a couple people are out, or?
No, unfortunately, no. I will tell you that in 3 other districts in Rhode Island, I am down probably 5 to 7 seats of route drivers in all of those towns.
So what do you do if a teacher is out? I mean, pardon me, a bus driver is out on a Friday?
So in some cases, and again, I can't speak to exactly what our local team does, but typically they will either double a route up, consolidate it. If there's any kind of modification or change, they try to do it. And the drivers, we have an excellent crew of drivers here. They've been here a long time. They can navigate and work miracles together, and work together with dispatch and make things happen. I wish I had a pool. I would be honest with you. I don't. I don't have the luxury to add, or it's going to be a very tough year for us, just across the board.
Mr. Rogalski?
Just 2 quick parent questions that I've had. Are we
Sure.
running buses at full 100% capacity for each route?
As far as I'm concerned, we're going by the CDC recommendations and direction of the community, and we're routing the buses to their fullest.
Okay, and is there going to be assigned seating on the buses this year, or seating charts for buses?
Good question.
Yeah.
Has that been assigned?
Yes, we do have assigned seats, and masking is required for federal regulation, and windows are open when it's allowable.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Mr. Schmuck, for making it here this evening on kind of short notice. This was very helpful, I think, for all of us and hopefully for everyone who's watching. And thank you, and let's have a great first day of school.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, that's all I have this evening.
Okay, that's it? Ms. Smith?
Madam Chair, if I could just ask one more question of Dr. Thornton. This goes back to the governor's executive order and questions that we're seeing. I have a frog in my throat. Questions that we're seeing. So we all know that the governor put this executive order in place. It's there until September 18th. And that's a battle for General Assembly to have with the governor and not for us. With that being said, the RIDE board mandated that any plans from any school system that came in that did not mandate masks was to be rejected. And I'm wondering how we can approach that and what should we be doing. And I'm looking to the guidance and actually following what has happened this week in Gloucester and their vote. And I'm wondering, should we be looking at something? What are the superintendents discussing? Because this seems to be an overstretch of their powers,
Right.
and we're going to have to deal with it at some time.
To me, from a practical standpoint, I think that the exec order kind of mitigates anything the regents did in their action. And right now, we turned our plan in with our policy. And to me, I'm not concerned as far as it goes. I think the exec order right now, carries the day. Our policy kicks in if, he doesn't renew it. And I think doing that, we certainly comply. I know some committees, maybe want to take on that fight with the RIDE regents, but I think right now with the exec order in place, it kind of takes away that fight right now.
Right, and my concern is September 18th is that deadline, whether it's extended or not extended, it will not be indefinitely extended. And there's no doubt about that by the battle that's happening at the state level. My concern is we handed in a policy or our plan, and that plan has a mask mandate in there now. So if at some point down the line, your recommendation or our vote is to do that, strongly recommend and have it be an optional, are we going to have a problem with RIDE and saying, no, that's not what your plan was? Or is it our actual physical mask policy that says the school committee has final vote over?
Our policy went in.
Okay, so then we should be covered because they're aware that at any time we could have that vote outside of an executive.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the superintendent?
Just one, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. DeMonica.
Dr. Thornton, good luck. I mean, I know you're back, and let's have a happy and a really good year coming up, and we're all in school versus Zoom.
I'll just add one piece. We did get notice today that we actually have visitors for our opening day. We do have the governor and the commissioner coming to Cumberland. So they will be here on the first day of school. The schedule right now is 7:15 at the high school, approximately, 8 o'clock over at North Cumberland Middle, and then ending over at Ashton Elementary around a little after 9.
Great. Just what we need.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Okay, so moving on in the agenda. The next item on the agenda is reports of standing committees. First one is fiscal management subcommittee update. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, we did meet tonight. We had a lengthy meeting. We got an update from the business manager in regards to what he's trying to accomplish towards the end of the year and get prepared for our audit. I can say that we did talk about tonight about creating some funds in the district so that we can plan ahead. Things like spending money on roofs at the high school. He thinks that this business manager thinks it'll be about $1.5 million project, and we want to start putting money away so that we have the money in place like we've done in the past, buying computers, wherever it may be. So that's one thing he's talked about. Wants to reserve some money for special ed. You never know what's going to happen with new children coming into the district. And obviously, we're going to put money aside for curriculum. We're talking well over $1 million, and we want to start putting money aside. So we did talk about that and some other items in regard to the budget. And we have 6 different items here tonight to vote on for the construction going on in the district. So that's what I have for fiscal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next, the policy and procedures subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorillo.
Yes, policy and procedures did not meet this week. We will meet in 2 weeks where we will once again have a full agenda.
Thank you. Next is the Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update. This subcommittee also did not meet with all of the preparations for getting ready for the beginning of school, but we would like to meet in September, and where, a lot of things we're interested in, but especially the new high school curriculum coordinator and looking at how the assistant superintendent's office is all going to be working together. The next item on the agenda is the District Health and Wellness Subcommittee update. Mrs. Rogalski?
The District Health and Wellness Subcommittee didn't meet. We're looking to hold our first meeting in September. I'm sending out an email this week to schedule that.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing, the reading of new policy, second reading, A5, Title IX, Protections from Sex-Based Discrimination. Mr. Fiorillo, anything to add? Just a reading?
Yeah, just a reading.
Okay. And so the next item on this is if there are any public comments related to this specific policy. If there are, you can come up to the microphone. Okay. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public, and these comments can be related to anything. So if anyone would like to speak on record, you can come up to the microphone. Mr. Kitch, state your name and your address, and we have a 3-minute time limit. Thank you for being here, Mr. Kinch.
Madam Chair, and I won't be too long. I just, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, we both had a council meeting and a school committee meeting the same day. And on your agenda was support for Ms. Rogalski. And I just want to come back and also support you on what happened. And I just want to state for the record that personal insults do not move the ball forward. When we are debating an issue, or when you were debating an issue such as important as that, when personal attacks get involved in it, what it does is it distracts you from the real issue at hand, or at least as a member of the audience. So apologize I couldn't get here 2 weeks ago, but I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinch. Any other public comments? Okay. Next item on the agenda is new business, and the first item A, discussion and/or vote to approve proposed collective bargaining agreement with the Cumberland Teachers Association. Dr. Thornton, would you like to take this? No. Overview, okay. So this was discussed in exec, and the teachers' union has voted to approve this 3-year agreement, and we have gone through a successful negotiation, and now it is up to the school committee to vote to hopefully approve this agreement as well. Are there any comments or questions that anyone has? Mr. Collins.
I think it's very important, if this vote passes, to start the year off right. We've talked about this privately. You don't want to start a year, any year, especially a year like this, or coming out of COVID with a contract or a labor dispute. There are a couple highlights in the contract that, as a committee member, I'm very excited about. First of all, I think the compensation is fair, but the idea that Cumberland will be the first district in the state to offer paid maternity and paternity leave 2 weeks, I think is an excellent agreement. And the only other thing is, it's my understanding that the teachers not only agreed to the contract with the CTA, but they overwhelmingly did. So it sounds like administration is very pleased with the deal, and the teachers are overwhelmingly pleased. So if it passes, I think, we obviously have to thank the people, Mr. Adams, who's not here, Mr. Fiorello for negotiating it in the teachers' representation. So, but there are some points in there I think are very fair, and I think it's a great way to start the year. I've been part of labor issues before, and it's not fun to work in. So I think it's starting the year off right, and I'm happy for the teachers. I'm happy for administration. I think it's now, let's get the eye on education and students, which is the most important thing after all.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, just one item to point out that it also did include adoption, that new policy that we have, so that's a good thing, because someone like me who's adopted 2 children, Mr. Fiorello as well, adopting, we know what it's like and what it costs, and that certainly helps. But this was discussed, like you had said earlier, in executive session. I did get for a fiscal note, what it would look like down the road, and Mr. Pignano feels that we can make it work and make it happen. So even though it didn't go in front of fiscal, we did take at least I did a cursory review. We had it available in executive session. So I think it's a good contract. We gave a little, we got a little, and that's the way it is. I think this will be the second contract that we've started the school year on time with a contract with the teachers 3 years ago. With Mr. Mitchell, it was the same way. We wanted to get the contract out of the way. So it works. I plan on, for myself, voting to approve it tonight. And, happy employees, helped us. I mean, last year was a tough year for every teacher in this district. And I'm happy we got it resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Mr. Fiorello?
Yeah, I just want to also thank Dr. Thornton, of course, for his role in the negotiations, as well as Katie Duncanson, our HR director, who was instrumental throughout it, and also Mr. Prignano for adding, the fiscal piece to it. I also want to thank, although he was not on the actual negotiating team, we did consult with Mayor Mutter, so he was able to, provide some information as to the effect that this would have on the town budget, of course. So I just want to thank him for his assistance as well.
Any other comments or questions? Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes, Mr.
I'd like
Collins.
to make a motion to approve the CTA contract as written.
Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. Congratulations, everyone.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Dr. Thornton.
I don't want to speak before your vote, but I just want to commend the committee for approving the contract. I think it really was a good process, and I think we're all thrilled to open the year with a contract. So thank you all for approving the contract.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion and a vote to approve purchasing resolutions. Mr. DeMonica, would you
Madam
like to
Chair.
take these?
Yes, Madam Chair. All right, the first one is SCPR 08-2021-38A amended. School cafeteria furniture purchase is authorized and empowering the Cumberland School Committee to purchase from Kitteridge of Agawam, Mass. For cafeteria furniture at the high school and/or community school in an amount not to exceed $49,349.60. In this amount is a maximum of shipping of $5,000. Kitteridge won't have the exact number until it's actually shipped to us, so, that's the number we have for now. So it was approved on the 3-0 vote, and the money to pay for this is coming from the Cumberland Restricted Food Service account. I would move passage.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve SCPR 08-2021-38A. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0.
Great, thank you. Next is a resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to authorize payment number 2 and 3 for $59,945 and $26,144 to ADS Construction, Inc. of East Providence, Rhode Island for Phase 2 indoor portion of the high school security project. It's been signed off by the architects as far as the work has been completed for those payments. And the money for this comes out of the school capital reserve account. It did pass upstairs on a 3-0 vote, and I would move passage.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to pass SCPR 08-2021-51.
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0.
Great, thank you. Next is SCPR 08-2021-52. Resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to authorize payment number 7 in the amount of $23,403.34 to ADS Construction of East Providence, Rhode Island for outdoor portion of the Cumberland High School security projects. It did pass upstairs on a 3-0 vote, and the payment for this is coming from the town's master lease program, and I would move passage.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve SCPR 08-2021-52.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0.
Next, Madam Chair, is SCPR 08-2021-53. A resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to issue a change order with HV Collins of Providence, Rhode Island to repair the air handler units and the CHS transitional building cafeteria in an amount not to exceed $19,199.55. And the cost for this is coming out of the facilities budget. It did pass upstairs on the 3-0 vote, Madam Chair, and I am shocked that, we have to use the transitional building now for school space. The district is growing and it's not gonna stop. So I would move passage.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to pass SCPR 08-2021-53.
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0.
Next is SCPR 08-2021-54. A resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to issue a change order to H.V. Collins of Providence, Rhode Island for HVAC work at the Cumberland High School Transitional Building Administration Offices, which includes the Business Office, Human Resource, Superintendents, Special Ed, in an amount not to exceed $384,932. They're also getting new ceilings and lighting and so forth. This did go through the $79 million bond committee. It will be paid through the bond, and it passed upstairs 3-0. I move passage.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve SCPR 08-2021-54.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you, Mr. DeMonica.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and or vote on the second reading and final approval of new policy A5 Title IX Protections from Sex-Based Discrimination. Mr. Fiorello?
Yes, just to reiterate, this is the second reading. We approved the first reading a couple of weeks ago. This was a policy written by Mr. Groves, who happens to be here tonight, with some help from Steve Adams. But this has been a bit of a process, and this brings us in line with what we should be doing, as well as just complying with law and actually really spelling out responsibilities of the school department, who the reporting officers are, all of that kind of information. So unless if anybody has any questions, this policy, of course, has not changed since the first reading. I would make a motion to approve it.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve A5 Title IX Protections from Sex-Based Discrimination.
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins and Mrs. Feather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Next item on the agenda is discussion and a vote to approve payment of bills.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, there
DeMonica?
is no payment of bills this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item on the agenda is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Mr. Fiorello.
We just approved really a bunch of money for the school construction projects, whether they're specifically as a result of the 79 million bond or some side projects that we're taking out of our funds to support those projects. I think it's important to note that with these kinds of massive scale projects, there are always going to be change orders, which is why you see them. We had a situation a few weeks ago, for those that don't know, I'm on the building committee. I also attend all the building renovation meetings, although I was not there today. But we actually found some structural issues in one of the old walls, so they had to be completely redesigned and redone. And I just want to thank Louis Torado and Associates, because a lot of companies would turn around and charge us for all that extra work, but because he's doing such a massive scale project for us, and we've worked with him in the past, he does a lot of this redesign work really for free. So there's a lot of savings there for us. So I just want to thank Mr. Torado for that work.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Ms. Smith.
If I could, just two quick ones. First, I wanted to thank Councilman Kinch and also Mayor Mutter. They took a lot of time and stepped forward and really supported one of our members. And I'm really proud to live in a town where your elected officials stand together and try to do what's best and also give the support that's needed in a difficult time. So thank you for that. And the second thing I wanted to do was, I think it's important that we just take a moment and reflect on what's happening on the other side of the world. We have a lot of people here that have had family members that have served overseas or over in Afghanistan, and so far today we've lost 13 soldiers. That count is sure to change, and I think it's important that we reflect and give our best and support however we can in our military, and thanking those that have lost their lives today, saving many others.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Collins?
That's tough to follow. No, it's obviously very serious. But I wanted to also, the most obvious thing going on is school starts Monday. And it's exciting. Kids, like, oh, I don't want to go back to school. They're lying. They want to go back to school. The teachers, let's assume most of them want to go back, but no, they're excited to, and it's going to be another crazy year. You know, this is supposed to be behind us, but I think we're in better footing than we were a year ago, thanks to the administrative team, Dr. Thornton, Mr. Damana, and their leadership team. And, you know, I don't think they've left no stone unturned. There are going to be, obviously, it's a fluid situation, especially with COVID and government mandates, but at the end of the day, the kids and its education, we've been educating kids over 100 years in this country, and the fundamentals haven't changed. So I look forward to seeing my children off to school, and I'm sure the teachers are looking forward to them coming regardless of what happens. So thank you for all the preparation you've put into it, all the communication, and all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes to get us to opening day. But the fun begins on Monday, so good luck to everybody involved.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to wish everyone good luck coming days coming up for school. We do have a sort of our own building committee, which is Mr. Chandler, Mr. Prignano, and Mr. DeJesus in regards to, and Superintendent as well, in regards to getting these schools ready to go. And, you know, when we picked Mr. DeJesus a year ago, we picked the right guy to help us get along. He's here 7 days a week. And I just want to thank the secretaries, the maintenance people that are out there working and gonna be working to get the schools right. And the teachers, we're back, you know, and even though we gotta wear these, we're back. And to my wife in the corner up there, 5:30 comes too early in the morning. There is a spare bedroom in the house for that purpose. But I wish everyone, you know, good luck, and we're going to get through it. I'm excited over this new construction that we're going to be doing over the next 3 or 4 years, and for the change that's going to make Cumberland a whole lot better. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I also want to thank Counselor Bolio also for her support for the school committee and for Mrs. Rogalski, and I totally agree, Carrie. It's Ms. Smith. It's been really nice to see the leadership of the town come together like that and support each other. And thank you. Yeah, the first day of school is Monday, so everything that everyone has said, I think everyone is excited, and we're excited to see the buses work, the students get to school, the teachers do what they need to do. So congratulations to everyone, and here's to a happy first day of school. Next item on the agenda is a vote to go into executive session. But, Dr. Thornton, do we have exec tonight?
We do not.
Okay, and the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Mrs. Feather makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. We are adjourned at 8:39 PM. Thank you, everyone.